Morning.
Morning to you.
Welcome to Ghana.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
First time here?
No, about the 15th or more.
Oh, that means you are now a Ghanaian, if I should put it that way. Because 15 times, yes, you should be a Ghanaian.
Well, my hairdresser in Johannesburg is a Ghanaian.
Okay, so at least you have the Ghanaian accent.
Yeah, very much so, yes. Now, I know a little bit about Ghana.
Okay. So this is the 15th time. This time around, what brings you to Ghana?
Well, I've been invited by GAMRO to participate in a series of workshops dealing with rights and copyright and value chain in recorded music here in Ghana.
And how often do you do this, apart from Ghana, how often do you do this training for organizations, copyright organizations across the world, or probably Africa or
Well, as an independent consultant, I've been doing it for the last 12 years, both for the creative side as well as for the recorded music side. But for the last 2 years now, I'm working with the IFPI based in London. That's the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry. And we're working in about 10 sub-Saharan African countries.
So let's talk about the Ghana trip and the knowledge you're coming to impact on the GAMRO board here. What critically are you looking at as in your stay, during your stay here? What critically are you addressing or why are you teaching?
Well, as you know, collective management in Ghana has had a bit of a ropey history. And the new team that started about 18 months ago is really, I think, set the record in a new direction. And they invited us to come here to focus on three areas. One is the internal management, two is the board sensitization and understanding of the full value chain and strategy going forward. And then, of course, for the general membership of Ghanaian rights holders in the field of music to understand better the value chain. And having also been a producer and a label owner together with music publishing house and studio in my younger years, I have some understanding of how the international music business works.
Okay. In my earlier interaction with you, you have over 40 years experience when it comes to music in general. But let's talk about copyright. From what you've studied in Ghana and from your experience over the years, where are we? Are we on the right footing? Have we arrived yet, or you think we are getting there, or you think a lot more work needs to be done?
They say dynamite comes in small packages, you know. And Ghana may not be a big country like Nigeria, but you don't stand back as far as your artists are concerned and the quality of recordings and, you know, the caliber of songwriters. But I think that the real issue is that often we as creators or producers, we don't always understand the value chain. So when it comes to where Ghana is at the moment, it has a modern law. Your government has the enabling environment, which is created with its 2005 law. There's a history, of course, of lack of understanding or signing of contracts which are not always fully understood, whether it's by the contractor or the contractee. And those kind of things need to, you know, move on. And then, of course, the whole digitization game and the value of business has changed. And I don't have to tell you that the recorded music business has moved digital today. And in fact, for the first time this year, we published as International Confederation that over 40%, it's now about 45% of our income comes from digital rather than physical product. So, you know, the music market is different, but Ghana certainly has modern laws compared to quite a number of other African and developing countries. So it's now a matter of getting the institutions and the representative associations and the rights holders, very important if you're a musician or you're a producer or if you're a composer or you're a arranger, that you understand the value chain. So if our process begins well here, then obviously we'd like to see GAMRO take a more leading role and other institutions here, producers associations, musicians unions. I happen to know the Musica guys reasonably well. And we would hope to see, you know, a lot of new developments and exciting developments so that West African music is not only the Hooijer brothers or D'banj or Davido, you know, but it's also Reggie Rockstone of my era, maybe a little more, or maybe Becca or Sakodiye.
You seem to know a lot more about Ghanaian music, but before we go to that bit, you mentioned GAMRO taking a leading role, trying to make sure that structures are there and things are done properly. From where you sit, what have you noticed as to be some of the challenges that GAMRO is facing here as a country? You did applaud us for the laws we've passed since 2005, but what are some of the key challenges you've noticed that GAMRO is facing presently?
It's not for me. I think it's for the board and their spokesman to say what challenges they face. But generally in Africa and the Caribbean, where most of my experience is, although some of the Middle East and Arab countries, the situation is that institutions in Africa, because copyright has come later to us with decolonization and so on. So our institutions are younger and not as strong. And so it's really important for us to strengthen our institutions. And in fact, one of your institutions is a leader in African countries, among even South African countries. The Musicians Union here has a lot to say, and it works, and there's a lot of criticism on election time, but that's politics rather than business. And if you were to go and look for a premises where many musicians' union in other larger African countries are housed compared to Ghana, you wouldn't find them. So it's institution, capacity, knowledge, and then of course the age-old thing, leadership. So technical competency, human skills and interaction, and then conceptual skills to see the future.
Gamro, as you speak, is the only entity backed by law to collect and pay royalties to musicians in the country. And over the years, they've experienced a lot of challenges when it comes to doing that, particularly disagreement by certain fronts and factions, as in they don't understand how they do their work, they are not being fair and all that. I wanted to find out from you, if you were to advise Gamro with respect to that, what lessons can you give them? And also another issue about live performances. We've had times that Gamro basically have to go to these event organizers and tell them, you know what, you have to pay for the event because you have to pay copyright and royalties for the event itself, and they face challenges. What do you think is the way forward to that? How should that be addressed, and how should we comply when it comes to that?
Well, look, Rome wasn't built in a day. My society on the Gamro front is 50 odd years old, and we started collecting, a few dollars, and today, it's tens of millions of dollars a year. But I think that it's like anything, you build up. I think the lack of understanding sometimes, and if only one group of rights holders in the technical legal sense, in other words, if we're looking only after the musical work and not the sound recording, then I as a producer, and I have a copyright in my producer, I want to know from Gamro where is my money. Or if I'm a songwriter and Gamro is only looking after the producer side. But with a market like yours, when Gamro takes on both rights, it will address a lot of the detractors who have felt left out and they know they need something, but they're not sure, where it is and why are they being left out. And hence my engagement with the board, so that it's a bit like a railway line. You don't see a train riding on one track. So we're riding on two tracks, the underlying musical work, and when it's recorded, the actual sound recording and the phonographic. So GAPI and its members should be doing a lot better than they've done in the past. But practically, when it comes to live concerts and so on, it's an internationally established principle that when I become a member of Gamro and I go and play at a live concert, the concert promoter pays me to perform my musical instrument. It doesn't commission me to write a song and acquire the copyright in my song. I've given my rights to Gamro as a songwriter, and if I happen to be Ali Campbell of UB40 and I'm playing a concert and Jonathan represents me here in Ghana and I'm singing, I will get paid by the promoter, the concert promoter, or the owner of the hall or premises for my singing Kingston Town. However, when it comes to the question of the Gamro license, the promoter will take out a Gamro license, and I, as a songwriter, together maybe with others who have written that song, and a music publisher which is not present here, would get their royalties from Gamro.
So let's try and put this scenario. Let's give example, like for example, Sarkodie writes his own song.
Yes.
Now he's being paid to perform at an event.
Yes. As a musician. To sing, to play instruments with his backing, to dance, so he is a performer. the underlying copyright in the song, which he may have written or may have co-written with somebody else who's not present, or he may just do a cover of, I don't know, Dibange or maybe AKA or whoever else it happens to be, an ACON number. The situation is that's a separate and coexisting right in law, and you would pay separately for those.
But if it involves one artist who wrote the song, composed the song, and did everything, and is going to perform at an event that he or she has been paid to, where does the camera come in?
It comes in because when I become a composer and I go and join Gamro, I give my rights past, present, and future in the field of public performance, broadcasting, and cable or internet transmission to Gamro. So I no longer represent them because each individual is almost, it's very difficult for each individual to actually administer his own rights. Possibly in a concert he could do so, but musicians and creators around the world have chosen not to do that. They will only contract directly for their performance arrangements. And so if you invite Akon here and he happens to write his own song, the facts of the matter, exactly the same applies. So whether it's a Ghanaian artist or whether it's a South African artist or whether it's a British artist makes no difference.
From what you've said, it is really critical that as an event organizer, you need to respect the copyright laws and the right ownership and all that. From your experience over the years, how are these issues dealt with in terms of if somebody does not adhere to that? Because, like I said, Gammo has the right to take rights and royalties from musicians. What should be put in place to make sure this is adhered to, and those who fall short of it, what are some of the punishment or involved in it?
Yeah, well, let's turn it around the other way and say that there's an obligation on the rights owners through their associations like GAMRO or SAMRO or CAMP, whoever it happens to be in East Africa or MCSK or COSON in Nigeria. The situation is an onus on us to explain clearly, and as best as I've tried to do in the short time we have together, this aspect to the promoters, that part of their overhead, not just the insurance, not the rain insurance, not the artist fees, not the hotel accommodation, but also the royalty to GAMRO needs to be paid. They need to start budgeting for that in their budgets, which they do around the world, so why should Ghana be an exception? And from there, I think the important thing also is that sometimes we need to educate our own members. They don't always understand that. But African precedents, the legal precedents have been established. So there was a group that performed in Uganda, and the promoter paid in Kenya because the GAMRO is strong there, and in Tanzania because the GAMRO is strong there. But in Uganda, the GAMRO wasn't so strong, so they decided not to pay. The judge found that irrespective of the fact that the performer was singing some of the songs which he co-wrote or wrote exclusively himself, the local society, the GAMRO there, controlled those rights and had nothing to do with the engagement of the performing artistries of Sarkodie, for example.
We have some musicians who are not part of GAMRO. Well, like I said, it's not everybody who's going to buy into the plan or what GAMRO is supposed to achieve and do. They are not part of it. There was recently a musician like George Jara, who is a veteran musician, who says he does not believe in GAMRO, and that he prefers to go to Mali, for example, because he's received a lot more royalties from Mali than GAMRO. Instances where you have musicians like this having these sentiments and feelings, how best should GAMRO handle such situations? What kind of advice will you give them?
I had examples like that in my own country, and we have the examples in various countries around the world. It has to do with whether there's confidence in the organization. And I think nobody would deny, as would the current GAMRO board, that in the past, GAMRO and its predecessor, COSGA, struggled for a significant period of time. But the situation is that shouldn't detract from my interest in joining a society which can license collectively on my behalf that which I cannot do. But I mean, it's well known that some musicians would go to another society wherever their market is big. So if Johnny Clegg and Joluka, who were a big hit in our days, were actually touring largely Europe, or Ladysmith Black Mambazo, the United States, if they had chosen, and today you can be a member of more than one society, so you might be a member of the British because you're touring there half the time of the year, and you might be a member of GAMRO for the other half of the year here. But it's a young team. We had our elections, and they really started, as it were, with a clean slate in February last year. So, you know, you learn to stand before you walk, you learn to walk before you run. But we are confident, and we would like to see as best as possible how we can help them and other international multilateral organizations to see that GAMRO really start moving. But the signs are good.
I was coming to the issue of piracy. Now, you notice that for West Africa, particularly in Africa, that issue is really key. And when you're talking about right ownership, I own the rights to the song I've produced, but if some piracy somewhere decides to produce copies and sell without my consent, clearly it means that they're depriving me of the money I'm supposed to make. From your experience in Samro, and I'm not saying that Samro is perfect and South Africa is perfect. Clearly, the issue of piracy will be there. Do your reign as a boss there, you face issues with piracy, and Ghana too is still here and it's still there, and Cameroon is still fighting it. What, in your way, is the sure and best way to fight piracy so that musicians can get their money's worth?
As a businessman and economist speaking independently, you can't fight against everything that is for free, as opposed to paying. Human nature says, I don't want to pay if I can get it for free. But the truth really is that the market has changed significantly. Over the last 15 years, the 25 or 30 billion US dollars that was spent on recorded product is down to about, less than $15 billion a year. So physical product is going out. So if we're talking about the changing format and shifting format, obviously, Spotify, Deezer, the streaming services, all that's changing. And as bandwidth grows, the market grows. So the nature of piracy also changes. So we have piracy, whether the promoter or the event hall owner doesn't pay. That's also piracy, just a different kind of piracy. So I think it's about focus on where the major areas are. So it's great to know that in Ghana there is a strong conversation going on between GAMRO and the broadcasters, who, if they were unlicensed, I would regard as a pirate. That they are starting to talk about paying. In South Africa they're paying, in Namibia, in Botswana they're paying, in Kenya they're paying something, in Tanzania they're engaging at the moment, as they are in Algeria or Cote d'Ivoire. So the situation is that there's no reason why, as part of the constructive approach to a holistic business in Ghana, the broadcasters don't pay, and that obviously strengthens the institutions and alleviates the problem of piracy from a broadcasting point of view. From a physical product point of view, well, that's a significantly dying industry, and as you correctly said, especially in West and East Africa, the challenge of physical piracy, because of the lack of presence of and also knowledge of rights owners and some of the big international rights owners, has been prejudicial. But I think I mentioned to you off camera that Sony has now opened a representative office in Lagos. So that's encouraging. We see significant capital coming back into West Africa. In South Africa, we've been privileged to have the presence of the three major labels in Africa, and that has also contributed to the development of the industry. But when it's changing and piracy continues, one of the great things you have in your country is the blank tape or private copying levy. So for the small private copying stuff, that compensates rights holders significantly, and leaves are taken out of the Ghanaian model there in other African countries. My country, we're looking at that today. We haven't done it yet, and piracy is rife there too still.
Okay, before I let you go, let's talk about the issue of logging, where GAMRO is trying to push to get the radio station, the TV station to log the songs they play. It means it's a sure way to help GAMRO say, okay, this artist's song was played this number of times. So it means that this is how much is due the person of the month. Because right now, with that challenge there, GAMRO can't say for a fact, as we speak, that, okay, Sarkodie's song was played, let's say, 20 times or 200 times in a month, and therefore this is how much money should be paid. From your experience in South Africa, and probably what you've seen across Africa, what advice will you give GAMRO with respect to that? Because clearly, if I am coming to take money, I want to take the money because this is how many times my song has been played, or this is how many times it has been used elsewhere at a concert and all that. What advice will you give GAMRO?
Look, I think if I was to use multimedia's channels and set up a business model and stream all their stations and charge a subscription for that, I think your shareholders, without any compensation to them, the right that they have in their broadcast, they would be a little upset with me, and especially if my model was very significant and I'd got a lot of big pipe and I was able to stream it around the world. So I think there is a principle, if I use your product, you pay for it. But there's also a knowledge of what product of mine are you using? So if I'm buying 2 or 3 cars, have different prices, etc., or whatever the case may be, from our side, we're saying, and most radio stations, you know, you have selector, power play, you have all sorts of fancy air check and so on. You have these different monitoring systems. So it's a matter of pushing a button and providing that list or sending an e-file to Gamro of what happened in the last month. So I don't think it's a major issue. I just think it's a discussion that needs to take place. Of course, it is a challenge because in the old days, there were no monitoring services. So what happened was you had and we won't go down that road of payola and plugola, and who pays who to get the song played. And there's the argument of the marketing of the song and the argument of we add value to your revenue stream by you using our music. So I think one sees it as a synergy between the two. And today, you know, monitoring services like BMAT, Vericast, and Media Guide and all these other things, you can pay an independent guy to rip your stuff, and then you can do your own monitoring, but who pays for that is important. And then without anybody's help, you would be able to know exactly what is being played. So these are parts of the discussions that we're having with management and with the board, and to see what is the best way forward. Principles are eternal, methodologies change. So what is good for Ghana, what is good for Gamro, what is good for Multimedia Group with its channels, radio and television, and what's good for the ShopRite goes here in South Africa, from South Africa, and the other restaurateurs or hoteliers who are investing here, you know, are they paying their money too?
Finally, you love Ghanaian music. Like you said, you mentioned a lot of artists and all that. How closely do you follow Ghanaian music?
It's difficult to say, you know, as a sort of veteran a little of music in Africa. I think, you know, rhythm was born here as opposed to maybe other countries. But do I follow Ghanaian music? I follow world music. So in other words, wherever there is good music, if I find myself in Morocco, you know, it might be a very different taste to hear. Who's playing in my car at the moment? Most probably you'll have Salif Keita, you would have some of our local stuff in South Africa, some East African Sauti Soul or Nameless, and you might even find Yemi Alade. But no, Sakodi is there, and but Reggie is good stuff, you know. And there's 1 or 2 folk who were my friends here from years gone by who've passed on, but their music, you know, the hip life is eternal.
So in terms of the quality, do you think we can stand internationally, globally, competitively with any global artists? Do we have the potential here? Do you see that?
Potential is a loaded word. And you shouldn't have said potential, because I think I said earlier on, you know, every country has its. We have digitization today. You people, I don't know if you're broadcasting on digital audio or DTT at the moment today, but the situation is, so therefore the quality, maybe the schooling and the professionalism is different from country to country. But I mean, I saw one of the first Ultra HD videos to come out of Kenya. But it wasn't the filming, it wasn't the quality, it was the message in that music video that wasn't targeting the market. So everybody was guessing about characters in the music video rather than the message of the song and so on. So I think, you know, I'm an old professional at that, and I don't dabble in the production side anymore. But on a practical basis, I could go to a dance hall and easily dance to Ghanaian music the whole night without having to listen to any foreign music.
And from your experience, what do you think the artists should do to be able to go global? Probably, yes, so that there'll be the big names they mention out there. We have somebody like Whiskey trying to penetrate the world market now, and his name is mentioned out there. What can the others also do to be able to also reach that level?
Don't kill yourself, skill yourself.
That's nice. Thanks.